happened last night, this morning. This morning, in the night, this giant group of men came. They came to our camp, led by that traitor Judas. He walked up. Judas walked up to Jesus and planted a kiss on his cheek. And Jesus whispered something in his ear, and we knew what was going to happen. They came with clubs and swords. One of us picked up a sword, I don't remember who, and tried to fight back, tried to defend ourselves, and Jesus bent down, picked up the ear that was cut off, and put it back on his head. Jesus warned us that this is what was going to happen, that one of us was going to betray them. None of us thought it was Judas. Jesus told us that we were all going to leave him, and we did. When the men came, we were so afraid for our lives that one of them grabbed one of our coats, and we were so desperate to escape that we just pulled off all of our clothes and ran around the forest like we were madmen. Jesus wanted us to stay up and stay on guard, but I was just so tired. I fell asleep. I failed. I fell asleep and I failed him. When he told us that we were all going to betray him, I was like, no. Like, that's not going to happen, Jesus. I'm never going to betray you. I'm never going to deny you. And he said, trust me, before the crow or the rooster, before the rooster crows or whatever, I will have denied him 3 times. And I thought he was crazy. I managed to hide from all of the soldiers that took us. And as they led Jesus in the night, because they knew what they were doing was wrong, I was so afraid. I was so afraid. And then they started leading him towards town, and some people thought they knew me, that they recognized my accent, and they're like, you're him, you're part of Jesus' camp, aren't you? And I was like, no, I'm not. Leave me alone. I denied him. I followed the religious leaders as they're trying to get all of the people, someone to stand trial, and they found a lot of people that were willing to just do what these religious leaders were asking for. They didn't listen to them, thankfully. Somebody else came, you're him, aren't you? And I was like, no, get away from me. I denied him a second time. I denied our Lord a second time. And then they found these 2 men that were at one of Jesus' teachings this week, and they quoted him, and the religious leader just ripped his shawl and yelled blasphemy. And others joined in, and he asked the people what should happen. Did you hear what he said? And they were like, blasphemy, blasphemy. He should die. They're going to kill our Lord. Somebody came up to me again, and they're like, you're him, aren't you? And I was like, no, get away from me. And then the rooster crowed. was right. He was right. I deny my Savior. He's on trial for blasphemy and people are calling for his head and it's my fault. It's my fault. I betrayed him. He knew what was going to happen. Blasphemy. It's not blasphemy. It's the truth. I know it's the truth. It's the truth. It's got to be the truth. It's the truth, right? It's not blasphemy. I know. I know it's the truth. He doesn't deserve to die. He's not going to die. He's not going to die. He said he was going to die. He said I was going to deny him 3 times. He can't die. Not Jesus. Judas! How dare you betray Judas? Ah! It wasn't blasphemy, was it? It wasn't blasphemy. It's Friday. Midday. It's about midday now. What's the rest of today going to bring? So, if you haven't clicked in, that was my recap of everything that happened at the beginning of Friday. I just really felt inspired to do a little bit of acting to do the recap. We are not doing Jesus is Calling today. In fact, we're going to jump right back into the book as we continue to read through the events of Good Friday. One of the darkest days in human history that brought one of the greatest victories. Happy Easter to you as well, Chris. All right. Well, let's jump into it. We are reading through Matthew 27. Yes, I'm going to look a little bit disheveled and my shirt's going to be a little bit buttoned up wrong. I don't know. I was trying to, play the part. He would not have been dressed like this. But anyways, not the best acting in the world, but it was fun. Matthew 27. Very early in the morning, the leading priests, the elders of the people, met again to lay plans for putting Jesus to death. They bound him. They led him away. They took him to Pilate, the Roman governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, realized that Jesus had been condemned to die, he was filled with remorse. So he took the 30 pieces of silver back to the leading priests and the elders. I have sinned, he declared, for I have betrayed an innocent man. What do we care? They retorted. That's your problem. Judas threw the silver coins down in the temple, and went out and hung himself. The leading priest picked up the coins. It wouldn't be right to put this money in the temple treasury, they said, since it was payment for murder. Yeah, that's right. They knew it was murder. After some discussion, they finally decided to buy the potter's field, and they made it into a cemetery for foreigners. That's why the field is still called the Field of Blood. This fulfilled the prophecy of Jeremiah that says, they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price at which he was valued by the people of Israel, and purchased a potter's field as the Lord directed. Jesus' trial before Pilate. Now, Jesus was standing before Pilate, the Roman governor. Are you king of the Jews? The governor asked him. Jesus replied, you have said it. But when the leading priests and the elders made their accusations against him, Jesus remained silent. Don't you hear all these charges they are bringing against you? Pilate demanded. But Jesus made no response to any of the charges, much to the governor's surprise. Now, it was the governor's custom each year during during this Passover celebration to release one prisoner to the crowd. Anyone they wanted. This year, there was a notorious prisoner, a man named Barabbas. As the crowd gathered before Pilate's house that morning, he asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" He knew very well that the religious leaders had arrested Jesus out of envy. Then, as Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent him a message. "Leave that innocent man alone. I suffered through a terrible nightmare about him last night." Meanwhile, the leading priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask Barabbas to be released for Jesus to be put to death. So the governor asked again, "Which of these two men do you want me to release to you?" The crowd shouted back, "Barabbas! Barabbas! 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 Barabbas!" And Pilate responded, "Then what should I do with the one called the Messiah?" And the crowd shouted back, "Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him!" "Why?" Pilate demanded. "What crime has he committed?" But the mob roared even louder, "Crucify him!" Pilate saw that he wasn't getting anywhere, and that the riot was developing. So he sent a bowl of water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. The responsibility is yours." And all the people yelled back, "We will take responsibility for his death, we and our children." So Pilate released Barabbas to them. He ordered Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip, then turned him over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified. Soldiers mocked Jesus. Some of the governor's soldiers took Jesus into their headquarters and called out the entire regiment. They stripped him and put scarlet robe on him. They wove thorn branches into a crown and put it on his head. And they placed a reed stick in his right hand and a scepter. Then they knelt before him in mockery and taunted him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spat on him, and they grabbed the stick and struck him in the head. When they finally were tired of mocking him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes back on him. Then they laid him away to be crucified. That's the wrong hat. I just realized that's the wrong hat. I thought I grabbed the Jesus hat. Sorry. My costume was not complete. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. Sorry. All right. 32. The Crucifixion. Along the way, they came across a man named Simon. He was from Cyrene, and the soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross. And they went out to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. The soldiers gave Jesus a mix of wine. They gave Jesus wine mixed with bitter gall, but when he had tasted it, he refused to drink it. After they had nailed him to the cross, the soldiers gambled for his clothes by throwing dice. Then they sat around and kept guard as he hung there. A sign was fastened above Jesus' head, announcing the charge against him. It read, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews." 2 revolutionaries were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. The people passing by shouted abuse, shaking their heads in mockery. "Look at you now!" they yelled at him. "You said you were going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Well then, if you're the Son of God, save yourself and come down from the cross." The leading priests and teachers of religious law and the elders also mocked Jesus. "He saved others," they scoffed, "but he can't save himself." "So, he is the King of Israel, is he? Let him come down from that cross right now, and then we'll believe him." He trusted God, so let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, "I am the Son of God." Even the revolutionaries who were crucified him ridiculed him in the same way. The death of Jesus. At noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. At about 3 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." Sabachthani. I know I'm messing that wrong up. I had the correct pronunciation of that. But it means, which means, my God, why have you abandoned me?" Some of the bystanders misunderstood and thought he was calling for the prophet Elijah. One of them ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, holding it up to him on a reed stick so he could drink. But the rest said, "Wait, let's see whether Elijah comes to save him." Then Jesus shouted out again, and he released his spirit. At that moment, the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split apart, the tombs opened. Bodies of many godly men and women who had died were raised from the dead. They left their cemetery after Jesus' resurrection, went into the holy city of Jerusalem, and appeared to many people. The Roman officer and all the other soldiers at the crucifixion were terrified by the earthquake and all that had happened. They said, "This man truly was the Son of God." And many women who had come from Galilee with Jesus to care for him were watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee. The burial of Jesus. As evening approached, Joseph, a rich man from Arimathea, who had become a follower of Jesus, went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. And Pilate issued an order to release it to him. Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a long sheet of clean linen cloth. He placed it in his own tomb, which had been carved out of the rock. Then he rolled a great stone across the entrance and left. Both Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting across from the tomb and watching. The next day on Sabbath, the leading priests, the next day being Saturday, being today in history. The next day on the Sabbath, the leading priests and Pharisees went to see Pilate. They told him, "Sir, we remember that deceiver once said, while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise from the dead.' So we request that you seal the tomb until the 3rd day. This will prevent his disciples from coming and stealing his body and then telling everyone he was raised from the dead. If that happens, we'll be worse off than we were at first." Pilate replied, "Take the guards and secure it the best you can." So they sealed the tomb and posted guards to protect it. May God add a blessing to the reading of his word. Next time you'll see me is on Monday. Let's go back into character for a second. They did it. They did it. They publicly did it on the same day. The people chanted for him to be crucified. Our mothers were there. His mother was there. Women were braver than we were. I denied him. I let him die alone. Mocked by everybody. I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do. I betrayed God. And then they killed him. I don't know what to do. I hear that they're going to be guarding him 24/7, that we can't even go to the tomb, pay our respects. Maybe the 12 of us could just stay in a place, be in hiding for a while. Once everything calms down, we'll find something to do. Maybe we could go fishing in a couple days. I don't know. And see. All right. So that's how I wanted to finish off the thought thing with me pretending to be Peter. He's a little bit emotional. I actually got a tear worked up there. Anyways, there's a few things that I want to respond to in here that that jumped out to me. So, one, Judas was so full of remorse for what he did, and he walked with Jesus for so long, and he made this mistake, and he ended up hanging himself. I think Jesus knew this too. And this is one of the strongest areas where the Bible actually talks against suicide. Suicide is looked down upon with what Jesus said, and then seeing what Judas did. But then we have the trial before Pilate, where the religious leaders knew what they were doing wrong. It was out of envy. They even called it murder, so they couldn't accept the 30 pieces of silver back. They knew what they were doing to some degree. And they did it anyway. And they misled the people anyway. And the people kind of justly believed the people that had been teaching them their whole lives that Jesus was evil. I don't blame them. Like with a lot of things in today's world, there's a lot of people that we put our trust into that shouldn't have our trust. It's okay to challenge our leaders. It's okay to ask them why they've made this decision. It's okay to question. The Bible encourages us to question, to not just follow blindly. Pilate tries so hard to get the people to see that this is not something that they want. Pick this innocent man or this violent, vile person in Barabbas. And they chose to kill Jesus, which is amazing in its symbolic nature. Jesus dies in the place of a violent, vile, rebellious, dangerous person. Jesus dies in his place. Just as Jesus died in the place for us and all of our garbage. Jesus takes the place of that violent, dangerous, reckless, sinful Barabbas. Very literally. very least, if you don't believe Jesus is God, you have to see that that's the first thing that he did, and it foreshadows. And as a Christian, I can look at Barabbas and see myself. I used to be violent. I almost killed one of my best friends because he stole my hat, and I snapped and I went crazy. And I was angry. I used to get so many fights, and I would swear left, right, up, down, and center. I was an angry, violent individual. I got into a fight at least 4 days a week for almost 2 solid years. I was violent. I was vile. Like Barabbas. And Jesus came into my life, and he changed me. He transformed. He renewed my mind. He renewed my heart. One of my favorite sayings is, he washed my brain. And we get to see the soldiers mocking Jesus, and I want to get back to that in a second. But one of the things that really stands out here, and why the 4 Gospels are so important, this is, I'm 95% sure this is in all of the Gospels. I didn't double check that. I always like to double check when I say facts like that. But they all have different perspectives. And one of the things that really stands out in this translation is it says the 2 revolutionaries mocked Jesus. But in one of the other accounts of this event, one of the revolutionaries ends up finally coming to Jesus' defense. And it's like, we deserve to be here. He doesn't. And Jesus offers him a line of forgiveness and saying, I tell you the truth, this day or the next day or whatever he says, I will see you in paradise, talking about heaven. But that's not what we see here. From the perspective of Matthew, everyone was mocking him. He would have seen the one guy making fun of him and attributed it to both. From his perspective, both people mocked Jesus. And he sees all the women at the cross, at the foot of the cross. I think that's pretty powerful too. And this mocking of Jesus, the soldiers mocking Jesus. Before I was a Christian, I was involved here at Youth for Christ. And they asked us at one of the local churches at Compass to do a Easter-based skit. And as a non-Christian, I was invited to be the Roman soldier who mocked Jesus. And I got to write my own thing. And I the only rule was I had to end it with, maybe he's right. So as a non-Christian, I thought it'd be funny to just make fun of everyone. They're like, my job was to mock Jesus. And I was like, I'm going to mock Jesus and I'm going to have fun doing it. And I wrote this scathing PG version on how I thought everyone was stupid that followed Christ. Like, he's obviously just a man, so on and so forth. He says he's this, but I mean, look at him. I overpowered him this much. Like, so I read the story. I knew the story, and I used some words right from the Bible, but I used a lot of my own words. And I ripped on Jesus, and I ripped on anyone that believed in him. And then at the end of my thing, as I ripped into them, and I looked at the crowd, and I was like, oh no, I've just spent like the last 5 minutes making fun of them and making fun of Jesus. And now I'm about to finish, and I got to go back down amongst them. I might get crucified. And I was actually a little bit scared. And that fear kind of worked into my performance a little bit as I pretended to look up at Jesus on the cross. It was the whole, and it wasn't in this version, but forgive them, they know not what they do. forgive them. We're killing you, and you are still saying that you're innocent. Forgive them. Maybe he was telling the truth. And that was it. And I walked back down, and I sat in amongst the people. And then once it was all said and done, people started coming up to me, and I was like, oh no. That fighting spirit was almost inside. Like, I might have to fight my way out of this church because these people are going to be angry because of what I just did. And instead they were like, wow, that was powerful. And they were impressed with my performance instead of angry at it. I called them all stupid to their faces. They were impressed with it. And that was a really big turning point for me to go, like, even though I've been hanging out with Christians, I knew a lot of Christians that I really, really liked. I painted this picture of what it meant to follow Jesus in this one light, and I might have just met some of the special ones. There's a lot of angry, vengeful, hate-filled Christians out there. And you hear all the ones on the news. You hear about all of his followers that make mistakes. There's that one church, that Southern Baptist church, that is pretty much denounced by every other Jesus-following place, but they call themselves Christians, and Christians get labeled with them, alongside them, as they protest funerals and of soldiers, and they protest weddings and all of that jazz. And they've even come up to Canada, and they'll protest concerts and stuff. And Christians often get labeled as our worst. And in that moment, well, I was expecting the worst. Some of them knew I wasn't a Christian. Some of them knew that the words I said, I might have really believed in my heart. But they were still encouraged by it. And that changed. It changed something in me. And I started looking at following Christ as following the person of Christ and not the followers of Christ. It's so easy to look at the people that are following Christ, that are trying to be the hands and the feet, and just seeing how much they screw up and how much they fall short. But when you look at Jesus, that he has forgiven you, that he has forgiven me, that he's forgiven them, and he's not done. He's continually forgiving, continuing to guide when we let him, but we have to make that choice. And like back then when Jesus was crucified, there's a lot of leaders that have been taught bad and that are teaching their followers poorly. There's a lot of people that stopped looking and reading their Bible and just listening to their pastor. Just listening to the zeitgeist of the church. And they lift the church above Jesus, where they need to be working together. Jesus is the head. But we have a tendency in our culture to want to fit in, to come dressed properly. I'm a firm believer in that we need to clothe ourselves in truth and in honesty when we come to church. Not with suits and ties. As someone that grew up without a suit and a tie, if I went to one of these churches, I would have felt like an outcast and would have felt less than. So I empathize with the person who might be less than and become clothed in truth and in honesty. When we read about that, the wedding ceremony, and the person didn't come clothed properly, I always read that as someone coming to fit in with the others, to fit in with what they look like instead of fitting in with truth that's guarding them. The Bible often uses metaphors of clothing and armor to describe things, and I really do think that clothing ourselves in honesty and in truth is what he wants. Not to be dressed to the nines and to impress those around us. Look at how together we are. Our shirts are all done up nice. No. Jesus looks beyond the surface. He looks beyond the disheveled hair. He looks into our heart. And that's what he saves us from, the darkness that clouds and crushes our heart. To transition back, Jesus was up on that tree. Oh, one more thing before we close off today. Zombies. Yeah, did you catch that? Zombies are in the Bible. It is official. It is true. Let me read that part again. If you did not click in, yes, zombies are in the Bible, and I love it. I'm a big, not a big horror fan, but I do like some of those things, and zombie media has always been one of those things that has interested me. But the original zombies are here in Scripture. Verse 52, Matthew 27:52. They left the ceremony after Jesus' resurrection. 52. The tombs opened. The bodies of many godly men and women who had died were raised from the dead. They left the cemetery after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city of Jerusalem and appeared to many people. Once again, this zombie is not like the zombie that we might know in our media. It's like a twisted version of it. But the Bible uses a lot of metaphor from death to life. You're dead to sin, and then you're alive in Christ. Dead to life. Jesus, once again, this little bit shows the power that God has over life and death. And yeah, my body's broken. I can't wake up without just being in immense back pain. But you know what? In heaven, my body is going to be perfect. When the power of life and death isn't just shown in Lazarus. Not just shown here with zombies rising up from the ground. Now, it could just be that when the ground shook, the bodies raised to the top, and then people had to be taken away in carts through the town and reburied or something like that. That is a very logical possibility. But I like to think these people walked up, and if it was today, they were like, "Hey, spot a tea," and they told people about God. And I just think that's a really awesome thing. But the ultimate zombie is Jesus. Jesus is my zombie. I feel like I could totally make that into a thing. If any of you are watching, like Sarah, if you're watching and you have artistic ability, I want somebody now, or I need to look for it. Jesus is my zombie. I can't believe I didn't think about that till just now. Anyways, yeah. Going back to the character, if you missed any of this, I started this off in character of Paul. And I'm going to end with this. I'm not going to end in prayer today. I'll pray after this is done. But I want to end in character prayer. So I'm going to go back to my acting mode for a second. I guess I already did that, actually. But yeah, no. Forget that. I'm not going to act again. This is one of the darkest days in human history. Saturday is one of the darkest days in human history, the day after Good Friday. Jesus was crucified and died at around 3 o'clock. The next day, The disciples were full of hopelessness. The mothers of the sons of Zebedee, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of Jesus, they're weeping. Mary saw her son beaten, mocked, and hung, and died in front of her eyes. The disciples saw their teacher, their rabbi, God, in human flesh, die before their very eyes. They understood less than these religious leaders who were like, he said that he's going to rise from the dead. The disciples were defeated. Strangers everywhere that heard Jesus speak and preach and were like, this is it. This is our revolutionary. This is the one who's going to rescue us from the hands of the Romans. Died. He wasn't the Messiah. Our hope is gone. They didn't understand. They didn't know what was coming. They didn't know about Sunday and what Sunday was going to bring. Today is a day of hopelessness because we don't know what tomorrow brings. But God does. God knows what's happening in our hopelessness, and he offers us hope. If only we listen. If only we have ears to listen. Today in history is one of the most hopeless days. But now we know that Sunday came. But for now, this day in history, as I act as Peter feels crushed. Peter feels like he wronged and betrayed God. Peter is hopeless. But Jesus, he is hope. He knows that Sunday is coming. Do you? Lord, give us the strength even when we are feeling absolutely defeated. Help us. Help us to trust that Sunday is coming. I encourage you guys to check out our local church service tomorrow. I'll see y'all on Monday. God bless.